Hey.
hello. Welcome to Haman Nature. Tyrone, they said we could never do it live stream, but gosh darn it, we are, I
From
think.
the earth to the moon to live stream in this decade.
We're only doing this, ladies and gentlemen, because I lost a bet.
Oh, yeah. What was the bet?
Oh, I don't know. Somebody said we could never live stream. I had to prove them wrong.
All
So,
right.
yeah, welcome to Haman Nature, everybody. I am Adam Haman. With me, as always, my buddy Tyrone, the porcupine hobo. How you doing?
Woo. Well, I'm excited, man. Our first live stream.
Yep. And all the cool kids are doing it, so why not us? Let us talk, shall we, about one President Donald Trump, number 47, and what he's been up to. Specifically, I want to talk about his pardoning of Ross Ulbricht and what you think about that. I'm pretty
Woo.
excited about it.
We need the party favors.
Right.
I forgot. Yeah, well, hey, with so much monumental news, usually, we record these episodes in advance and then edit them and everything. It's like, well, this one was so big, we didn't want to wait. We wanted to talk about it right away. So if people have been watching our episodes, they will notice something a little bit different about your sign in the background.
That's right. Where is it? Right there. This is the Free Ross sign that we were all waving in President or candidate Trump's face when he visited the Libertarian National Convention in May in Washington, D.C. this year. And then my lovely wife cut it in half. It used to say Free Ross, and now it says Ross Free.
Yay.
So I'm going to display that proudly. Because, yeah, the man is free. We were hoping it was going to happen during Inauguration Day, but it didn't. But we also got not just a commutation of Ross Ulbricht's sentence, which would have been great enough, but an actual full pardon.
Right.
He is a free citizen, just like you or me, and I can't be more excited about it.
Yeah, so he came through. Maybe it wasn't exactly day one, but day 2 is good enough, or whenever it finally came through. Yeah, the full pardon was interesting. Because what did he say at the convention? Did he even? He did mention it in the speech he gave, right? It wasn't just a behind the scenes.
He did. He read his teleprompter and read his speech, and I could be wrong, but I thought he said he was going to commute the sentence.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
So I didn't know what to expect. I do know that Angela McArdle, the chair of the Libertarian Party, was always before that day at our convention and after, she was always pushing for pardoning Ross Ulbricht, not just commuting a sentence. She always had her eye on the prize and fought for the right thing, and she got the right thing. And I'm impressed because, strictly speaking, Trump could easily tell himself that he didn't need any support, from the Libertarian Party, whether he actually got any or not. And he certainly, once elected, doesn't need to follow through on any promises, except that he said he would. And so a lot of people leading up, between now and the convention back in May, a lot of people have been saying that, what are you doing even trying to talk to this guy? He's not going to follow through. He has no incentive to, and
Right.
You're just being schmucks to even try to cozy up to power to influence, the likely future president. And we always said, that's nuts. How are you ever going to make the world a more libertarian place if you're not out there talking to these people, trying to influence them, trying to persuade them to the justness of our various causes? And this is a huge victory for not only Ross Ulbricht and his very brave and determined mother, Lynn, who's been fighting for his release, for 11, 12 years now. It's just so great that she can give him a big out of prison hug, and he gets to sleep in a bed out of that jail in Tucson. That's such a travesty of justice for a guy to go to prison for 2 life sentences back to back plus 40 years,
Plus 50
making it
years. Let's just tack
just in
that
case,
on.
I mean, they tack all that stuff on for parole reasons and this, that, and the other. But yeah, just to make him completely ineligible for parole ever for the crime of creating a website and using cryptocurrency. However you feel about drug laws, what they did to this kid, he was young at the time, was completely preposterous, and it was just
Preposterous.
such an injustice. I'm glad we get to shine a spotlight on the case. I've been writing about it at hamannature.substack.com. You can go there and search Ross Ulbricht, or even just Ross. I only talk about one if you want the details of the case. But thank you, President Trump, for following through on a promise that you absolutely did not have to follow through on. So
Yeah.
we appreciate it.
I mean, just to show how corrupt everything is, but especially the justice system in this country. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg, admitted, or when the whole free speech stuff was going on with Facebook and all that stuff, and Zuckerberg came out and admitted, yeah, there's a lot of like child trafficking stuff or whatever pornography going on Facebook that we haven't done a great job of regulating or trying to crack down on, or things like that. So does Zuckerberg go to jail? Because the premise of the Ross Ulbricht thing is that he was responsible in some way for what happened on his website that he built, for the actions that taken by others. So by that logic, shouldn't a lot of other people be in jail?
Drugs are a serious crime, but child prostitution isn't.
It's ridiculous. Obviously, this wasn't about that. It wasn't about the illegal drugs that were being bought and sold, or whatever else was going on Silk Road. It was about one thing and one thing only: cryptocurrency. And the Justice Department, because crypto poses a threat to the dominance of the U.S. dollar. At least that's perceived by some to be a threat to the dollar. I don't really see it that way. I don't think they're competing in that same regard. They had to make an example out of something. That's all this was.
Well, you got to remember the times. Cryptocurrency, Bitcoin was very new back then, and so was the internet, and the dark web probably just sent shivers up and down the backs of these regulators and officials, especially when they searched for the Dread Pirate Roberts, aka Ross Ulbricht, for like 15 months and could not find him.
Mm-hmm.
And he's writing these blog posts or treatises or whatever they were that are basically Rothbardian in nature, talking all about how the government is too authoritarian. We don't need it. Hey, look here, I could just make a marketplace and we can go around their backs and peacefully exchange goods for money that they don't have anything to do with. And if you're well versed from a statist perspective about what money is, this fiat counterfeit nonsense that we've got the public hoodwinked into using, if you're knowledgeable about that, I bet the early days of Bitcoin were horrifying to you. The government sort of has a corral on it. They're coming to grips with it as a thing, just turning it into a investable asset like any other, when it was, the original vision was to be a replacement money, like a Hayekian alternative for money. And it still could be that, but right now it looks like it's just being treated like an asset. So from their perspective, I mean, you can see why they were freaked out. But at the end of the day, he wasn't convicted of anything more than some computer crimes and running a website where other people bought and sold drugs.
2 life sentences.
Yeah, like it's not even a joke. They treated this guy like he was a multiple serial killer, just an absolute worst of the worst. And it just goes to show the justice system is perverse, and we don't get many wins. So when we get one, we're going to celebrate it. Break out those party hats and woo.
This also demonstrates to me why one of the many piles of reasons that it's hard to do business in the United States, because one day this thing's illegal. The next day, it's legal.
Right.
The next day, it's illegal again. And, you know, if you're caught on the wrong side of that, good luck. Because a lot of these things get enforced retroactively sometimes, but sometimes things just change in the law willy-nilly that you're never made aware of in these 10,000 page bills that nobody ever reads. I mean, it's impossible to kind of be an independent operator or a small business owner. Only the huge corporations can really keep up with all this legal crap and protect themselves. So the whole thing needs reform, and this is just an example.
You bring up a great concept. It's not like starting a new business or even creating a new field of enterprise is impossible, but there's a huge amount of friction in it.
Mm-hmm.
And it all comes from the regulatory state and the amount of weight it can put into the boot that it crashes down on your skull if it decides it doesn't like what you do. I first heard the term for this, regime uncertainty, from the great economic historian Robert Higgs. I don't know if he picked up on it from somewhere else earlier, but regime uncertainty is a real thing. When you have capital that could be invested profitably, at least by the assessment of entrepreneurs, but they're unwilling or unable to do so, because what about the risk of the government coming along and ruining everything that you've created and making all that investment a sunk cost by declaring the enterprise illegal? You know, think about all the effort you'd put into building a specific type of factory or something, and distribution channels, and all that effort and time and literal resources being spent. What if the government just comes along and saying, yeah, every bit of this is illegal, so that was a foolish thing. It all goes to zero now. And you know, we're just talking about ones and zeros on the internet, but it's a real problem. Like, we're sort of lucky that Elon Musk is committing these real resources to all these incredible things that he's doing. But what if the government just comes along and makes them all illegal, like they threatened to do during the censorship regime of Joe Biden, and what would have continued if Kamala Harris had won? All the resources of Twitter, but it would have been wasted. And what if they shut down this whole rocket launch thing? You know, what would that have done? It's an incredible impediment to the beautiful, free, prosperous, abundant society we can have when entrepreneurs are scared to invest resources for fear of what the government will do to them.
So, I mean, that's great and everything. Trump came through on one promise, but now my question is, okay, now what? Ross is one man. There's thousands and thousands of people in jails that we would consider to be unjustly in jail for things like nonviolent drug offenses or things of that nature. So it was great that the Libertarian Party was able to, for the first time in my lifetime, I can think of, being able to actually impact and affect something on a national level, to have some sort of influence at the highest office. That's incredible. Is it a one-time thing? How can the libertarian movement take this and make sure that it's just the starting point, the building point? Otherwise, we can celebrate Ross's freedom, but tomorrow, that's it. We're back to where we were, kind of.
Yeah, man, that's a great point. And you'll hear this complaint also on the internet by haters of the Libertarian Party or the Mises Caucus or Angela McArdle herself. They'll say, yeah, big deal, one guy let out of prison, so what? But already you've seen that it's more than that. It wasn't specifically a libertarian issue, but Trump also immediately pardoned all the nonviolent January 6 incarcerated individuals. Before that, Biden, on the way out the door, yes, he made a lot of pardons that were clearly crony and crooked. His own family, Anthony Fauci, the January 6th committee, But he also released a bunch of federal nonviolent uh, people that are in prison for drug offenses. And I think that was done. I mean, maybe it was just cover for Biden, all the rest of the pardons that he was going to do. But I think it was because of the noise that was being made in the political sphere about pardoning peaceful people in general. He pardoned uh, Julian Assange. He didn't have to do that. There were problems with his conviction or the case over there in the UK, and there was an extradition issue. But the pardon didn't have to happen, and it did. And I think the zeitgeist is changing in a more libertarian direction. And by the way, the Trump administration's cabinet, the first go around, wasn't libertarian in the slightest. It was full of neocons and political cronies, which Trump found out to his own detriment fairly quickly. This time around, it looks an awful lot different. If you were of a libertarian mind during the COVID regime with the mask mandates and locking you in your home and declaring your job or your business non-essential, vax mandates, all the shutdowns, what they did to kids, if you were annoyed by all that, you're probably pretty happy that Trump is trying to appoint Robert Kennedy Jr. To lead Health and Human Services. That's a big win. And getting Jay Bhattacharya as the head of the National Institute of Health, that'll be amazing. Maybe Kash Patel can do some great things. Oh, and I don't actually think there's going to be any revelations that come out of it, but Trump has already signed an executive order to release the JFK files.
I was going to bring that one up.
I can't imagine that if the government, as I believe, or elements of it, actually killed the sitting president, they actually wrote down memos and kept him for several decades. That seems dumb, but just in case.
Well, it's kind of like a crooked business keeps two sets of books.
Right.
I am guaranteeing you that the intelligence agencies have an alternate set of documents that will be declassified and released.
Well, before we make that turn, I think you're right, but all of those things are libertarian in essence, and I don't think they would have happened without the pressure as a viable voting bloc, a spoiler, if you will, of the Libertarian Party. And I think we're only a handful of days into Trump's presidency. I hope we get to see more. Even if we don't, even if the libertarian-ishness of his administration fizzles out, I mean, I know he's going to do some horribly unlibertarian things. The tariffs are an abomination. He declared the drug cartels in Mexico to be terrorist organizations. I'm sure that doesn't bode well for liberty. But we've already seen some pretty big wins, and I think we're going to see some more. And yeah, so now let's talk about maybe what they did to JFK and the cover-up. Even the release of the files that I don't think are going to be anything except your second set of books, there are almost always fingerprints in the cover-up. Mm-hmm. I mean, I came to believe that the CIA, with the help of the Pentagon, killed him and covered up with a fraudulent autopsy because of that. That was the cover-up. They had to try and figure out how to make that poor man's head look like it only got hit by one bullet. And you can't do that without leaving a huge bunch of clumsy fingerprints, in my opinion. And if they actually have to reveal their second set of books, I bet there's going to be errors and omissions that are going to be uncoverable by an internet full of cyber sleuths looking for inconsistencies and things that just don't add up. I bet we're going to see something. It just won't be the signed memo by the head of the CIA back then that, oh yeah, let's go ahead and kill the president.
Well, it brings up a question with all these executive orders. Okay, great. He signs them and then throws the pens into the crowd, which was so awesome, so Trumpian. I'm watching that and I'm like, these pens are like historically significant artifacts, right? Yeah. He's just chucking them into the crowd like he's at a basketball game with a t-shirt cannon. Shoot that stuff. It was pretty awesome. But with all these executive orders, okay, he signs them, but I haven't seen any release of any files. It's like, who's gonna follow through and actually like release those or do any of the other executive orders, right? until he gets his people in place, nobody's going to comply with those or do anything about it. I mean, there's no process for if you disobey or don't follow an executive order, you go to jail or something like that. That just doesn't happen. I don't know how this is supposed to work. Actually, I guess is what I'm saying.
It does require a bunch of buy-in from the other, all the layers of government underneath him. But I mean, people are getting fired over the DEI stuff already. I mean, they're actually being told to pack their bags.
Yeah, I don't
I
know.
think
I've heard a couple of instances of a lot of these agencies are just renaming the titles of the people to something else.
both things are true, but
So,
it's not working in every case. And I
yeah.
think it's going to take a while. But
Hmm.
the difference between this administration and his first is he's more serious now. He understands a lot more of what can go wrong. He thought, obviously, I'm the boss. I come in and I say some things and everybody does what I say. And it does not work like that. If you don't get an army of bureaucrats in line with your vision, it can't happen. And I assume he's staffed in a way that more correspondingly aligns to his interests for good or for ill. I think therefore you're going to see a more effective government. I don't think, I mean, we've talked about this a little bit before, but I was surprised the deep state that we all think is so incredibly powerful actually let him take the presidency again.
Yeah, I lost that prediction.
Either he bent the knee in important ways. I mean, maybe it's just Israel that's the
Maybe
most
it's just the
important
Israel
faction,
thing. Yeah.
but either he bent the knee or they couldn't or didn't have the will to stop him. Maybe a lot of the effort behind the Russia collusion thing was that these people believed the hype that he was a Putin puppet or some kind of Nazi or whatever. I mean, Trump derangement syndrome is real and it comes from an awful lot of sources. Maybe it just doesn't exist in as much of a powerful way anymore. So you can't get the mass of people behind a movement to railroad Trump just because he's such a evil, danger to democracy, megalomaniac, whatever nonsense phrase they were going to use. Maybe it just doesn't exist anymore. And as we've said an awful lot on this show, Tyrone, we live in interesting times. I can't wait to see what happens next.
I was having dinner with friends last night, and we were having a conversation about this and other things, and a lot of skepticism if anything actually is really going to change or get done. We've seen this over and over again. Politicians come in, make promises, nothing happens because even if they don't change their mind or just do it, they were lying. If they were even serious about it and believed it, there, as you said, there's so much friction and pushback from the whole system that to get anything moving is so hard to do. So the point I made was, okay, let's say that he not much actually changes. Like they don't do Doge department doesn't end up cutting $2 trillion from the budget, and the tax on tips thing doesn't go through, and whatever, right? The point I made to my friends was like, this is at least pushing the needle culturally. And so this is now in the zeitgeist. It's now in the rhetoric. It's now in the minds of people that there's another way, that bringing light to some of these things as not being desirable and an alternate option. So even if in this 4-year cycle we don't see a lot of change, I think culturally the fact that somebody like Trump can win, that the Libertarian Party can have influence, these are all signs pointing that we are actually making progress, like real progress for the first time culturally, getting our philosophical views out there. My only concern is it too little too late at this point? My position, not to be doom and gloom and rain on the celebration, but I really see 2032 as kind of the end of things when Social Security goes absolutely bankrupt, all the unfunded liabilities start coming due. I mean, we're 36 trillion in debt, but we're really closer to 200 trillion in unfunded
if you count it at all,
and that bill is rapidly, there's no more avoiding it. So
well,
I
dude,
don't know, man. I'm not sure I'm hopeful for the future. I feel good right now, because
You're
we got
not
some
wrong.
wins, but I don't
You're
know.
not wrong, but I got to throw cold water in your face because, gosh darn it, this is a party. We started
Okay.
this episode off as a celebration for Ross.
Well, where's the champagne, man?
I drank mine right when I woke up. But I do think you're right that we are clearly moving the Overton window in a libertarian direction, or at least expanding it. Like the left wing insanity has just been so weird and awful, and it metastasized at such a high rate over the last 8 years plus. But I do think it's shrunk quite a bit. I do think the pushback to it hasn't been just explicitly a right wing version of authoritarianism. I do believe it's been a libertarian vision. And as you were listing off the proof of that, the elements of that, you left out the first thing we talked about on the very first episode of Haman Nature, which is the fact that a avowed libertarian anarchist Rothbardian who talked about how great Friedrich Hayek was and Milton Friedman won the presidency in Argentina a year ago, and is actually managing to reverse the socialist destructive course that once beautiful country has been sliding down ever since Peronism, or whatever you call their brand of crony socialism is. He's cut the government. It's not perfect, as we've talked about on an episode of the show with Bob Murphy, but it is moving in some great ways. These are demonstrable, undeniable wins. And you said that 2032 is going to be a blow up year for entitlements, and boy, you're right. I suspect the blow up is heading for us sooner. And I don't see a way out of it. But I also can't predict just how productive our economy can be if it were unshackled.
Well, that's true.
The personal computer revolution and the internet, the changes in production and distribution that we've seen, the enhancements have been amazing. And that's before we even talk about whatever productivity gains we get from robotics and AI. And good Lord, if we get to AGI, we could all be on easy street. So if the government could just get out of the way, I think a lot of great things are impossible. A lot of white pills should be swallowed. The problem is there's a lot of black pills out there too. As I say all the time, this this simulation we live in, wink, wink, if that's what it is just in an incredible state of flux right now. So many different things are possible, and there's no reason not to be optimistic. Why not? It feels better.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we'll just have to see where we go from here. But you're way more connected into the Libertarian Party itself. So I kind of want to just deviate from libertarian, let's say, general cultural shift to actually talk about politics a little bit more. So do you think in the next election cycle, the Libertarian Party will have some kind of foot in the door or voice to an ear?
There's a good reason to suspect that good things could happen. In between here in the next 4 years, we have elections every year or every 2 years, depending, and we are pushing a very radically decentralized strategy. It's called Project Decentralized Revolution, where we put our most effective, powerful voices in local offices where they have a chance to win. And if they win, they can actually do boots on the ground libertarian stuff, both locally and then just being an interposition, a nullifying force between state oppression and federal oppression, and then putting our best spokespeople, I guess, out on national runs, president and whatever. We're also moving the ball in a great way on Defend the Guard legislation, which is starting to become very popular in various state houses. That's where the legislation gets passed at the state house to make it illegal for their National Guard to be called up by the feds in cases of wars where Congress didn't do their job and actually declare war. And that's popular from both a left-wing and a right-wing perspective. We're having education reform starting to become very, very popular, school choice, educational savings accounts. we're pushing those in every state that we have a powerful presence. So yeah, I think the Libertarian Party has never been more effective in all its years than it has in the last 2 or 3 or 4 years, and I don't see any reason why that can't continue. The strong, powerful, pure, principled voice of libertarianism is being very well articulated and put forward in the political process in meaningful ways. The Libertarian Party of Colorado specifically has just got its hands around the throat of the Republicans out there.
Oh, nice.
If they're running bad candidates, the Libertarian Party is just saying, "Yeah, you're going to lose."
Oh, wow.
Very nice, hundreds of millions of dollars you're spending on your senatorial race, but you're terrible. You're nothing like Thomas Massey or Rand Paul. You're more like Mitch McConnell or Lindsey Graham. So we're going to put up a $100 filing fee and make sure you lose. We're not going to get a lot of votes, but we're going to get enough to make sure you win. And if more states, more parties in more states started to pull that lever, we could see a lot of good things happen, affecting both the Republicans and the Democrats, depending on the political situation in each individual state. So there's reason to be hopeful.
Yeah, especially if someone Rand Paul-ish replaces McConnell.
Oh yeah,
and since they're from the same state, I think there's a possibility that could happen.
Yeah, so is Thomas Massey. The water must be good in Kentucky.
Yeah,
Maybe it's the bourbon.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so a couple days from now, or a few days from now, we're going to release an episode pretty much just lambasting Trump's economic illiteracy, as we're calling it. So for those of you catching us here on the live stream, we're not going to go into that right now. But so even though we're very happy of some of the things Trump has done, like freeing Ross and declassifying the JFK files, and some of the other things he said, like, reducing income taxes and eliminating tax on tips and some things like that. But there's a lot he says and supports that we can't get on board with, that we would completely be opposed to. So I want to ask you, Adam, of the things you've heard him make claims on the campaign trail or since being in office, what's the one thing, I guess, you're most hopeful for, and the one thing you're most fearful of him doing, I guess?
Of him specifically, I guess the thing that the widest pill I can point to is just his obvious, the Overton window exists within Trump. His change in statist beliefs over the last 8 years is a shift in the right direction. Even if it's, it's inchoate. He hasn't read Murray Rothbard. He hasn't read Ludwig von Mises. He doesn't know things, but his anti-war instincts have always been pretty good. His feel for and distrust of corruption has always been pretty good. And I think even now, he's gotten he's gotten red-pilled on the efficacy and honesty, the possibility of honesty of government action. It's corrupt in its very essence and its design. And I think about him, the most optimistic thing is just that shift. And I hope we'll get some good things out of it. The bad stuff from him is nationalistic in nature, imperial. I mean, he wants to seize Greenland or buy it or something. I don't think that's good necessarily.
Yes, let's expand our territory even more. I mean,
he wants
the empire isn't big enough yet.
Wants to regain, Indian giving on the Panama Canal or whatever. And both these issues are a little more complex than I'm making them sound. But they're more territorial expansionist and empire-ish than I'm comfortable with.
Yep.
His tariffs, I think, are a terrible idea. His instincts are for a nationalism and an economic mercantilism that I think is very, very silly and counterproductive.
Yes.
But he also does have a lot of smart people who know better in his ear. And maybe he will just be using these things as a negotiating tool and not follow through. I hope. But those are the things I worry about: his nationalism and his economic illiteracy when it comes to mercantilism.
I want to believe that he really, wants to put America first, whatever that means, and to initiate those policies. Now, our definition of American first would probably be a lot different from his. Our definition of American first is just let's free the economy and let Americans be the productive ones and lead the world. Where Trump's version of America first is like how great can he be making policies? But again, putting the phrase America first into the culture, into the
Yeah,
zeitgeist, making it a
yeah,
popular movement moves the needle in the right direction. And it'll be up to people like you and me and others to define what that means and to make sure we're continually defining that message in those terms, and don't let it be defined by the enemies of liberty. That being said, I do think Trump is a mercantilist through and through, which is not our preferred system. But also, it's hard not to see him as a little bit of a grifter. I mean, he freed Ross partly because I think it had connections to the cryptocurrency, and now he's changed his mind on that and is super behind crypto. And surprise, surprise, just as he's getting behind crypto, he launches his own Trump coin and just pockets another few $1 billion.
and a Melania coin.
Yeah,
If
it's
I
like,
if I recall, I just did an episode of another fine fellows show, Proof of Pod by David Medley,
oh
and
yeah,
we'll
hmm
be posting a link to that. I think it just dropped yesterday, but we
oh
talked
great,
all about the Trump meme coin, which it's spelled $ Trump,
right,
so
right,
I'm calling it the Strump.
the
I'm going
stroke.
to see if I can make that stick.
I like it.
And
Did you
yeah,
get
he's
any?
definitely, yeah, of course not. He's obviously a grifter. I mean, he got a little mini monopoly on the casino business in Atlantic City, and
hmm
he uses eminent domain to expand parking garages. Yeah, he's a government grifter. There's a reason he paid off all the, he has that famous line. He knows politicians are crooked because he pays them off.
Oh
So
right, yeah.
yes, he's a grifter.
But hey,
He
how
brought
about
up,
those Trump steaks? That's great value, man. Those are those are top
yeah,
quality.
yeah, they have to be the best, just like his college.
It's always the best.
Um, Before we sign off, I want to underscore a point you just made because it's kind of a big one. The biggest danger, well, it's always true that the biggest danger to any libertarian anywhere is their own government.
hmm
But that being said, over the past couple of decades, there's been a push towards a globalist, one world government sort of vision of totalitarianism that we libertarians have been very, very afraid of, pushing back against, speaking out against. And it is true that, excuse me, it is true that right now we're sort of aligning ourselves with a right wing religious populism that is pushing back against globalism on nationalist reasons or nationalist instincts or impulses. And that's great. We'll take whatever allies that we can get, but we have to be mindful that
hmm
we're not just rah-rahing right-wing nationalism.
Right.
That's an impediment to liberty too. So while these are our allies, I think we need to be really getting close to them and talking constantly about the pure argument and advocacy for liberty and why it makes your culture better, your nation better, being a libertarian rather than a right-wing authoritarian. I think there are great arguments that are persuasive to use against these people, and we can't just, march away from a WEF gulag towards some sort of a right-wing authoritarian gulag. We don't want that either. So always keep the message pure while you take incremental gains wherever you can get them. That's the way I feel about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I do want to, before we sign off, promote that we are rapidly approaching our 100th episode. Adam, can you believe we've now been doing this? We just crossed the 1 year. The 1 year mark. Got the little notification on YouTube. Congratulations, you made 1 year. Woo! So we're 1 year old, Adam. That's awesome. But we're gonna plan to be doing another live stream a week from today. So Saturday, February 1st. So hopefully everybody will tune in for our 100th episode extravaganza. whatever,
Yes,
whatever we got planned for that.
happy 1 year oldest birthday there, Tyrone. I'm very proud. We will do a much better job, obviously, of promoting our live streaming as we get more better at it. This is
not,
we're shaking out the bugs in this.
We're not so good at marketing.
We're terrible at marketing, but we're persistent. That's why we're 1 year old.
That's right. That's right.
And I would like to urge people to go over to our Substack, where my writings and our other offerings are available. That's at hamannature.substack.com. And I just would like to encourage everybody to check out our streams and our YouTube videos. We have a channel on YouTube, obviously. In case you're watching this on X, that's at Haman Nature, Haman Nature. And thank you very much for watching and listening. We appreciate you. And thank you, Tyrone. This was awesome.
You got it. And as the South Park boys would say, America, F yeah.
We should probably make that our sign off for every episode.
Right. All right, Adam. Well, thanks. It's been a fun year, and we'll catch everybody next time, I guess.
Absolutely. Take care.